Welcome. It's our third anniversary here at Heartbreak Hope, and we use our anniversary date as a date of reflection and a way to think back as to what we've learned, how we've grown, and what's happening the last year. Today, hope, not heartbreak, is very much on my mind, and it's present in my everyday thoughts. There's a lot to be heartbroken about in the world. This podcast is not about that, although it is difficult to navigate life while understanding that so many are suffering, many suffering needlessly. So it's with great humility that I have the privilege of talking about change, aging, moving forward, and reinventing myself and you. Now, I'm in my 44th year of practice of law, and I have found myself during the past 3 years evolving as a lawyer, as a leader in my firm, and in my own personal life. And at 68, I realized, like so many other people who have had the privilege of living this long, I needed to recognize that life does move forward. I've entered about 8 years ago what many people are calling the third act. It's exciting. There has been so much written about this, spoken about this, podcasts, TED Talks, and many say, and I agree, that this is the happiest time of life. Should you make it here? Should you be healthy? Should you be able to support yourself? There's such joy in coming to this age and being present in this age. And for me, I'm the happiest I've ever been, and I am grateful for my good fortune. In the 1900s, the average American could expect to live to 47. The year I was born, 1956, the average age a person lived to was 69. Today, the average lifespan is about 80. And according to the U.S. Census Bureau, the number of Americans living into their 90s by 2050 could be 10 times higher than in 1980. Think about that. That's a long life. There are a lot of projections out there that life expectancy could approach triple digits later in the century. There's this great TED Talk by Jane Fonda, did it about 10, 13 years ago. And she talks about life's third act, the longevity revolution. In that talk, she discusses the fact that the norm has been aging is an arc. You're young, you get older, you peak, and then you sort of go down. But she reframes it as a staircase. You just keep going up and up and up and up. I love that. And I think that's the way to look at it. And I'm hopeful I'm looking at it like that professionally and personally. But, this is all new territory because nobody's lived this long. So we don't have a lot of role models out there to look toward to see how we should live at this age. One thing that's very present and very much on my mind is our value, our changing value as we age. I don't know about you, but I certainly have been struggling with that at age 68. I started reading recently a book that a friend of mine sent me called From Strength to Strength by Arthur Brooks. And at first I thought, another one of those books that talks about as you get older. But the reality is this book has hit home so many ways that I know I need to go back and reread it. And one of the things that he talks about is the striver's curse, which is people who strive to be excellent at what they do often wind up finding their inevitable decline terrifying. This idea that as we age, we become not important or invisible or less troubles me, because I believe as we age, we become more sensitive, more understanding. We have more wisdom. We have more strength. We have more perspective. To me, that's incredibly valuable. And it's perplexing to me as to why we don't look at aging like that as opposed to falling off the cliff. There is no cliff. There's only change. I believe if we could embrace our aging, lean into it, that we will become more fulfilled in life's simple pleasures, more fulfilled in our strengths, because we don't need the accolades, we don't need the affirmation that we may need when we're younger. We just need to be present and participate, and we get joy differently. We get joy from doing, from serving, from guiding, from helping, as opposed to being the center of the universe. That for me has been a gift of changing. I can now sit back and participate and get joy out of the participation as opposed to the attention it gives me. And I think that's very true for many, many people who are reaching a certain age. I talk to my friends and colleagues all the time about aging. It's my favorite topic next to finding a relationship and finding a partner. And what I hear from so many people is that they are afraid of going off the cliff. They're terrified, as Arthur Brooks talks about in From Strength to Strength. But in reality, if they can just view it as they're more than they were, I think that they'd be happier. I've learned some lessons, and I'd like to share them with you if you'll indulge. Welcome to Heartbreak Hope with Pat Barbarito, the show that explores how to build up or break down any relationship with confidence, clarity, and compassion. One of the things I've learned is that happiness is worth waiting for. You know, it's a marathon, not a sprint, as they say. Slow and steady wins the race. That's how I've lived my life. And like many people, through a lot of very, very unhappy, hard times. But you know, I got up every day, put one foot in front of the other, was positive, grateful for what I had, even if it wasn't what I wanted, even though it was painful. And when you wait and you stay the course, there's something extraordinary that happens. You learn what you want. You learn who you are. You become liberated in your aim. And there's so much potential that comes with that. You sort of shed away all the other bad stuff. Professionally, aging gracefully is a skill that really needs to be learned. And I have seen so many people not learn it. They hold on for dear life as to who they were, and they don't reinvent themselves. And it's painful and it's embarrassing and it's cringeworthy to watch this. I admit it's been a little hard for my ego to be an older lawyer, but the thing I do have now is a skill set that I didn't have 40 years ago or 30 years ago or 20 years ago. No, I'm not the same lawyer that I was, but I'm a different lawyer, in many ways better. Because what I've learned over the years is the ability to see a case from the 30,000 foot above view, to strategize it. I've learned to trust my guts when making a decision for a client. I've learned how to train lawyers with that approach and with the benefit of my experience. So sure, I'm not in the weeds like I used to be, but I have value that you don't have when you're a 5-year lawyer, a 10-year lawyer, a 20-year lawyer, no matter how good you are. And instead of holding on to those old skills and being the lawyer I was, what I've tried to do is embrace the lawyer that I am. So as a younger lawyer, I approached everything with fierce intensity and advocacy. Now, make no mistake about it, I'm still an advocate, but I'm an advocate with perspective. I could look at a situation calmly and analyze it, implementing strength when needed, softness when needed, but always accomplishing the goal of advocacy. And I can teach that, and I can oversee that, and I can strategize a case differently than I would have. So I can implement a strategy in a case that can be executed by other lawyers in my firm. And I think that's invaluable to a case because learning the law, memorizing the law, reading the cases is a given as a lawyer. But a case, as I've said many times before, has a successful outcome by strategizing it. And I think with age, that is something that we're able to do. So instead of saying, well, I'm not trying cases the way I used to, or I'm not in the trenches the way I used to be. No, but you're strategizing, overseeing things in a way that you couldn't do as a younger lawyer. And that's growth. Look, as a leader, it's not easy to step back and welcome other leaders, but it has to be done. Life moves forward. We lawyers, we have big egos, right? Me included. We think we know the way to do everything. But as my dear friend and partner, Gary Botwinick, always says, nothing should be run by somebody with more years behind them than in front of them. Sometimes that's tough to take to heart, but I try to give my wisdom and my history and my experience and watch and get joy out of people who have more years in front of them leading the path. Now, would I do things differently? Oh, many times I would. Do I get frustrated? You bet I do. But do I know enough to know that they may have a better way? Yes. Again, humility is something that you gain with age. Stepping aside and letting somebody take the reins. I have a mixed reaction to that. Part of my ego has to just take a deep breath and withdraw a bit. And then part of me gets such joy out of watching them do things differently and many times better than I would have. It's not either or, it's both and, right? I'm trying to understand that doing things my way in many ways is an ego issue, not necessarily the right way. And, lawyers are funny. If you ask most lawyers, who are you? They'll say, I'm a lawyer. We're lawyers. If you ask me who I am, I will tell you I'm a lawyer. Now, I'm many other things, right? I'm a mother, I'm a sister, I'm a daughter, I'm a million things. But I will say I'm a lawyer. And we hold on to that. And I think part of the fear is, what are we if we're not lawyers? But being a lawyer is something that requires constantly changing. You have to constantly reinvent yourself in terms of the type of lawyer you are, how you approach a case, how you analyze something, your temperament. And it's, as I said, you have to play the long game, because otherwise, if you stay stuck in something that you did 25 years ago, you're not going to be a successful lawyer. So we have to let go of the glory days just a little bit and embrace who we are today. In many ways, I'm trying to get a lot of joy out of watching people who are coming up the ranks, so to speak, really being remarkable, far more skilled than I was at their age. And it's a different world. We have technology now. Again, when I started practicing, we didn't have voicemail, for gosh sakes. We didn't have fax machines. So the practice law is different. And we've got to evolve with that. And I think that's something that aging hopefully teaches us. I don't think we fall off a cliff one day and are no longer relevant. But I do think we have to step back and let things move forward, just like people did when I came up the ranks. My partner, Ted Einhorn, is a brilliant example of this. He is now 91, so he was he was in his late 40s when I started practicing, and he allowed me to evolve, grow the practice in a way that I had a vision for, and embraced it and didn't resist it. And that was very positive for all of us. So when I joined the firm, I was in law school in 1980. It was a small practice in Northwest New Jersey. I often commented that I don't think that Ted Einhorn, who was our senior partner, saw me as a female lawyer. He saw me as a lawyer. But there were no role models. There were no role models as to how to conduct yourself, because I knew that while I wanted to be a lawyer and I became a divorce lawyer, what I wanted to be is a business person. And I wanted to grow a practice. That was my mission. I did that through the means of being a divorce lawyer for a lot of reasons, primarily because it was very difficult for women to bring in business 45 years ago. And divorce law was an area that you could go out and bring in cases one at a time. In many ways, not having role models or not having a script was a benefit to me, because I was able to make my own path, my own way, with my own personality. I remember those days when the only role models we had were women who, quite frankly, many times thought emulating men was the way to go, dressing like men, acting like men. I did not do that because I didn't have the capacity to do it. I didn't know any better. So by being true to myself, which I was able to grow in a way that I believe was good for the leadership of our firm. And Ted Einhorn had respect for that and let me figure it out along the way. And, not everything I did was perfect, but it was certainly different, I believe, than if a young man was going to take over leadership. So physically, mentally, spiritually, and emotionally, I believe I'm also stronger than I've ever been. And I think this is something that happens with age too. You know, when you get to a certain age where you feel like all the big stuff is taken care of, professionally, you have accomplished what you set out to accomplish and or continue to accomplish, but differently. You have time to stop and breathe. My children are raised, educated. I take better care of myself now. I take time to think about what I'm eating, how I'm exercising, how I'm conducting myself emotionally and spiritually. When you are in the everyday routine of life, we often forget those things. And I think that what has happened for me, and it happens to many people of a certain age, that there's this unique understanding that your body's not going to last forever. So you begin to cherish it in ways that I did not when I was younger. I was so busy running and doing and figuring it out that I never took time to really connect with my physical being. It sounds sort of out there, but I think that's something age gives us, the ability to stop and think. I have so many people around me who are getting sick, dying, quite frankly, that you realize how precious and fleeting life is. It sounds, again, so woo-woo-wee. I don't mean it to be, but I do think that is a benefit of age. And you just can't see that when you're younger. So if you have the privilege of living this long, healthy, I do think that you get the gift of really appreciating your body and your emotions and your physical condition. That's not to say bad things haven't happened. Nobody escapes life, but you appreciate the good days, the easy days, the days you get up and make coffee and read a book and consult with a client and look at the sunshine and have a warm bed and a roof over your head and the ability to go places and do things. Yeah, I think that is something that I, for one, am grateful for. And I don't feel like I'm racing to get there anymore. I feel like it's just, as Jane Fonda said, it's a staircase. I just keep going up and up. But I've got to keep climbing those stairs because if you stop, guess what? You die. So you got to just keep taking one step at a time, no matter how bleak things are. And, that's the thing age gives you. It's a privilege. It's a privilege. The last 3 years, as we've been doing the show, Heartbreak and Hope, I've learned a lot of things through my own experiences and through the many interviews I've done. So many interesting people. I've heard so many interesting stories. I speak with people about Heartbreak and Hope all the time, anytime I can. I'm sort of on a one-person mission to find hope in heartbreak. And one of the things I've learned is that old age really is a new beginning. It's an opportunity to embrace many things we didn't do before. So, for example, for me, I don't know how many more years I have left, but I do know there are things I haven't accomplished yet that I want to, and I think I'm capable of, that I wouldn't have had the skill set to do 20, 30 years ago. I think that that's a gift of age. What happens, and it's what's happened with me, and I've talked about on the show, is that you get to know yourself better. One of the things I think that this podcast has given me far more than I think I've given, because it's given me so much, is the opportunity to understand that there is tremendous heartbreak in the world, but there is such hope in situations. And if you know who you are, you approach things hopefully. And I'm not that naive where I think everything's so wonderful. I think heartbreak and sadness is just part of the human experience. It's a matter of managing it. I have many friends, colleagues who are extraordinarily anxious about their life at this point. I think part of that sometimes is people sort of get to this age and then they kind of fall off a cliff. They think, okay, I'm there, I'm retired, I have my pension or I have Social Security or whatever it is. I can draw from my 401k. Cliff. I don't think it's a cliff. I think it's continuing journey. Not the same, but nothing's the same. Because we live this long, it is very common for people to have more than one relationship in their lifetime, right? 100 years ago when you got married, you didn't have that long to be married, so it kind of works sometimes. But when you could be married 50, 60, 70 years, it's challenging. And I have such admiration for people who could maintain their marriage that long. And I know many people, big believer in marriage, who've been able to good, solid, long-term marriages. But there are many people who haven't been able to. Look at the divorce statistics, right? 50% of first marriages end. I think it's 60 or 70% of second and third marriages end. But if they're going to end and you're going to re-enter another relationship, it's going to be different. And if you learn from the first relationship or two or three, then the relationship you end up with, your sort of last chapters, your third act relationship, I believe, or lack thereof, by the way, if you decide to go through that third act alone without a committed partner spouse, I think that could be the best there ever was because, again, you've learned. You learned what to look for. You learn that value-based relationships are really important. You learn that chemistry is important, but without value-based connections, it doesn't matter. You learn that decency and honesty are important. You learn that how you look at the world through a certain lens really matters. For me, how I look at what's happening in the world, if I was not with a partner that looked at it the same way, I could not be in that relationship. And you also look at the world in a more narrow lane. I think that you learn that I'm staying in my lane. I can't change the world, but I want to stay in that lane either alone or with somebody who shares that value system for me. Because at the end of the day, what are we doing except helping each other get through, right? I mean, not much else to do except be there for each other, love each other, be loyal. I've had many classmates passing away because I'm getting older. We just had another one from high school pass away. And, there's all this social media talk going on. And one of the comments I wrote was, all we could do is, be there, loyal and loving through the journey and hold each other's hand at the end. I mean, what the hell else is there, right? Of course, everybody wishes they had a crystal ball and would know when life's going to end. None of us do. The trick for me is to live every day to the fullest. And I know that sounds like a cliche, but it really is the only thing we can do. I deal with the fear of aging by embracing the good things that are happening with it. They outweigh the fear. Of course, I'm afraid. I'm afraid of looking old, of acting old, of being physically limited. Yeah, I don't like it. I don't like it when I look in the mirror and see wrinkles. I don't like it when I see my gray roots coming in. It pisses me off. However, the good stuff that comes along with aging far outweighs that. The ability to be myself, my authentic self. And I don't mean in a insulting way to other people. I think I'm respectful to other people, but I own who I am. I deal with it by accepting that these are changes that are happening. They're life altering, but they could have so many benefits and they do. So I let the good stuff outweigh the fear. I see and talk to many people who are paralyzed with the idea that they are a certain age and they are confronted with the reality of starting a new beginning. It is paralyzing fear. I talk to people about this all the time, women in particular, quite frankly. Women who are retiring, who have lost a spouse, whose children don't need them anymore. And I think the way to deal with this is to not look at it as you have to create a new beginning. You don't have to start over. You have to just sort of take your history and let it morph into new things. So, for example, meeting a new friend at 70 or new friends isn't the same friendships that you have with your friends from when you're 8 years old. It just isn't. You have to accept that. So, my dearest friends are friends from when I'm 8, 10, 13 years old. There is a comfort level with them that just, I'll never be able to replace that. However, there is something that you gain from new friendships that an old friendship can't give you. And I try to look at it like that. I think that there are so many things you can get from new friendships. You could learn, you could experience. You can't duplicate history. You'll never have history like that with somebody. That's one of the sad things I think about meeting somebody in life, later in life, And I say, oh, but if you knew me when, or if you knew me then, or I'm always telling my partner stories about when I was younger and this and that. And it frustrates me that he didn't know me then, but that's life. You get different things out of people as you get older and as you form new connections. I also think that you have to accept that new friendships don't give you 100%. They give you 10% sometimes. That's okay. You get what you can out of it. things that gives me tremendous joy and growth is keeping a lot of young people in my life. I have daughters whose friends I talk to all the time and keep many young people in the office of my life. And I love to know their stories and what they're doing. And, probably I'm a little bit too nosy sometimes, but it gives me such optimism how they're raising their children and how they're living their lives. It's exciting and it's interesting. And for the most part, I believe younger people are far more ahead of where I was emotionally, immaturity wise at their ages. So I get a lot out of that. I often say, wow, I would have never thought of that at your age. So I try to embrace younger people in a way that I learn and grow from them. I try to stay connected to them, but I also try to embrace older people. There's so much you could learn from an older generation, older than me, so much wisdom and so much peace. I speak with my partner, Ted Einhorn, regularly, probably weekly, and he's as sharp as could be. He remembers more than I forgot sometimes. I mean, he just remembers so many things. But, he'll often say to me, "Uh, you got to let that go," or the things are different now. And he has simple perspective on things that I get joy out of that. So I'm trying to be open to new things, but I just think that, what are the choices? But people are paralyzed. I do see people paralyzed with fear of what do I do next? And I don't think it's again, falling off a cliff where it's a new beginning. I just think it's an evolution. There's a lot to be done in the world. I think that service is a way to embrace old age. So one of the things that I'm conscious of is because of my history, because of my life experience, because of things I've learned on Heartbreak and Hope, there are a lot of people with a lot of needs out there in the world. And I'm not talking about just economic needs. Of course, that's obvious, but assistance, comfort, help. And I think that by giving and by serving, you fill a lot of gaps of fear and loneliness. And I'm trying to focus on that. I'm trying to encourage people to do that because you want to feel okay about your life. Go to a soup kitchen, go to a homeless shelter, look at people who are lost and in pain. That'll help you. Helps me. And one of the things that you need at 70 that you didn't need at 50 or 30 is for the circle that you've been with for a long time to understand that you can't give what you gave when you're 50 or 30. That's the hardest thing for me. I think what happens as we age, approaching 70, we are so used to, particularly women, being there for everything, for our children, eventually our grandchildren, our colleagues, our professional world, our friends. For me, I think the thing I need most from my circle is for them to understand I can't give what I used to give. That's very painful for me. For example, I can't go to as many things as I used to go to. I can't be out 4 nights a week. It's too much for me. I don't have the energy to invest the time and hours of discussion or running off here and there or being as, quite frankly, productive professionally. What I would ask for, and I think that it's important to ask for at this age, is an understanding that I can't give you what I used to give you, even with your children, right? So if you're a parent, and I've been a single parent for many, many years, you are used to, jumping to your kids call, you get a text, Mom, where are you? I used to be able to, jump, navigate, juggle. It's a little harder now for me. Or if there's something going on with one of my daughters, it's a little harder for me to know that they're having a struggle without being able to fix it. So for me, what I need, and I bet I'm not alone in this, is for them to understand I am that age and to be patient with me and what I can give. I've picked up everyday things. The latest new thing I picked up is I don't watch TV for the most part, not because I'm too good for it or I'm better than that. It's just that a lot going on in the world that is unsettling to me. So I gave that up a few months ago. So I read now. I started going to the library, for example. And it sounds so, and I read. I don't read anything super, I mean, some things are intellectual, but I read okay stuff. I walk 2 miles a day, cooking, a little bit more, spending a half hour having coffee in the morning instead of gulping it down, trying to listen to people a little more carefully. So I'd like to say something exotic and interesting, like traveling to exotic places or doing, some wild exercise. Now, I picked up simplicity of life things, and that's been unbelievably satisfying to me. And that's a gift of age, because as you get to a certain point in life, you get joy out of different things. So again, it's not like you're starting a new chapter, you're beginning a new thing. You're just getting joy out of different things at different points in your life as you go through this journey. And you stay relevant at 70 differently than you were at 50 and differently than at 90. But you are relevant. I think there's nothing more important than young people growing and learning from their elders. My children spent a lot of time with my parents, who, as perhaps limited as they were, quite frankly, as parents, although they did the best they could, they were wonderful grandparents. My oldest daughter is director of a nursing home and involved in high-level elder care because of my parents. And she gets so much out of her nursing home population. Interesting stories, interesting life lessons. So I think that instead of discarding our elders, learning from them is really the secret to a good life. I'm not at that age yet, but if God willing, I get there, that's what my hope is, to share that journey as opposed to becoming irrelevant, because I believe we're relevant at every stage. I think the heartbreak happens when we discard ourselves, and we do it to ourselves. It's about being invisible at a certain age. I have friends who have discussed it, but I look at visibility different. I don't have to be as visible as it was 25 years ago. I don't have to be the star. I don't. Maybe I did at one point, but I don't. I think I'm visible because I'm okay to be seen different. As we enter into our 4th year at Heartbreak and Hope, I feel strongly about continuing to explore the human experience of connection, of partnership, of loneliness. And again, with what's going on in the world, they may not seem like the most important things, but, as they say, loneliness is an epidemic. And I think partnering is a way to address it. I see so many people at this point in life who are lonely for a partner, whatever that means, a companion, a lover, a spouse, whatever. A lonely heart is a hard thing to navigate the older we get. And I don't mean being alone. Being alone is not being lonely. I've said often, and I know many people who say it, I was lonelier in my marriage than when I was alone. And if you speak with a lot of people who are in a marriage that isn't healthy, they will tell you that there is a difference. But being lonely, alone, or with a partner is something that I'd like to continue conversations about. It's a small part of what's going on in the world, but it's important to me. I find myself on this one-woman mission that people should not be lonely. And there are many ways to not be lonely. I hope you stick around and join me and listen in on our podcast that we have scheduled for this year. Together, we continue to learn and grow and figure out life. And I hope you join me in that journey. Thank you so much for joining us today. Don't forget to follow us on your favorite podcast platform. Please give us a 5-star rating and leave a review so more people can listen in to Heartbreak and Hope with Pat Barbarito.